Hello everyone. Today I'll explain page rules. Page rules are available on any upgraded account, but are not active on the free version. So page rules are conditions that must be met for buttons to be displayed. You can use them to control what specific pages your buttons will appear or be hidden on. You can access page rules by clicking on the Visibility tab and going to the Page Rules section. You can set page rules for the entire button group by going to the Visibility tab for the button group, or you can set rules for individual buttons by clicking on the individual button and then going to the Visibility tab. If I go to the Page Rules section, the default rule is, of course, to show group on all pages. I can click on the drop-down menu and then on Add Page Rule to start creating a new rule. On the page rule pop-up that appears, I'll click on Add Condition Group, and I'll click on the plus icon to add my first rule. For the type of rule, I can base it on a variety of things. URL is used to specify a unique portion of a URL. If I want my group to only appear on a contact page, for example, I can make a rule for URL contains contact. This way, the rule will only be triggered if the URL contains contact, so it will just appear on my contact page. Path is similar to URL. Let's say you have blog pages that all appear on pages that begin with blog, like blog slash article 1, blog slash article 2, blog slash next article, and so on. Well, then I can set a path rule with blog so that the rule is only triggered on those blog pages. Next, you would select the operator. Let's say I want my rule to trigger only on my contact page. So I'll set a rule for URL contains and contact. You can select a variety of other operators as well, depending on the rule that you want to create. Does not contain if I want the rule to only be triggered if the page is not my contact page, for example. Or I could select is and then paste in the full URL for an exact match and so on. I can also set a rule based on page title, and I can set a rule based on the country the visitor is detected as being from. For visitor country, you can select is any of or is not any of as your operator, and then you can make a checklist of all the countries that you want to apply to your rule. If you are using the Buttonizer WordPress app and you are accessing your Buttonizer dashboard from your WordPress admin, you also have additional page rule types that you can choose from. You can choose WordPress page, which will allow you to select is any of or is not any of, and then make a checklist of each specific page that you want the rule to apply to. You can also choose blog, blog title, or category. Category will be to select from different categories that you have set up in your WordPress site. For example, if you put all of your blog pages in a blog category or all of your merchandise into a product category, then those categories will be available for you to select if you pick this type. Finally, you can select by user has role. For example, if you have given logged in users a different role than users that haven't signed in, then you can use that as a rule for whether a button is seen. So say maybe you want a chat button to only be available to signed in users. In that case, you can select user has role and then pick the role that you've given to the signed in visitors. Now let's stick with the example for a page rule that says URL contains contact. You can test out triggers by clicking on Test Out This Page Rule. You can paste in the address here and click on the debug page to see if the rule is triggered. So my homepage does not contain contact, so the rule was not successfully triggered. If I change my rule to doesn't contain and test out the page again, then I can see that the rule is triggered successfully. This is a handy tool to use if you're using more and more complicated page rules to make sure that a particular page is triggering a page rule the way that you want it to. Now, page rules can get more complicated because you can add multiple conditions. If I click on the plus sign, I can add more conditions as needed. So let's say I don't want it to appear on my contact page. and I do not want it to appear on my About page. When I have multiple conditions, there's also an and or Boolean to set. A good way to remember which one you want is and usually goes with does sort of rules, and or typically goes with does not rules. You can also click on Add Condition Group if you need to create even more complex rules. One last thing to note, you can name your page rule by clicking on the pencil icon next to the title up top. You'll want to name it something that you recognize easily. That way you can find it in your list of created page rules. If you have multiple sites, for example, naming it for the site it is being used on is a good idea because you'll start to see all your previously created page rules when you add a new rule to future buttons. Once you have your rule all set up, there's also a show or hide setting. Here you can select show group when this page rule is activated or hide group when this page rule is activated. All right, that's all for explaining page rules. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more helpful tips.